your patch production systems on your farms, okay? Dr. Ed has previously worked for the USDA Soil Conservation Service in western New York, which we don't hold that against him. RC&D, grassland specialist, serving dairy, beef, and sheep producers in the western counties of New York. Ed, his wife, and his four hubbies, colleagues, and manager 30-head Baker-based farm in Preston County, not too far from here. I consider Dr. Ed Rayburn a friend, and here he is. And so, wealth of information this man has. If you don't know him, get to know him and tap in, get his phone number, email address, and tap into resources and years of experience that he has to give and bring back to your farm that will work. Ed?
I did my unfortunately, I have lots of friends. And for those of you from Virginia, they did not hold my being from Virginia Tech against me either. Okay? It hasn't been taken. Okay, can everybody hear me? We're going to talk about optimizing cow calf income. Now, I want to paint a picture first. What I'm going to do here today is basically give you a checklist. We're not going to get into the depth of a lot of these points. I have fact sheets on the web. If you want to get into depth, we can get into depth. But I think it's good to have a checklist to say, okay, these are the things I need to be thinking about on the farm. So I'm going to be covering a lot of these things at a shallow level. I'm telling you that up front. If I get through it quick enough and you want to get into some of the details, you can ask some questions. But like I said, we have fact sheets that will get into more details. So if you want the tractor to run, you have to make sure the fuel shutoff is in and the ignition switch is on. Okay, that's number one. It's on your checklist. Okay, a farmer is a mechanic, a laborer, an agronomist, soil, crops, a livestock husbandry person, nutrition, genetics, and a business manager. You have a lot of hats to wear, don't you? But there are basic things that we need to know. You can't be an expert in everything, all right? No, we want to have management benchmarks, and that's what we're going to talk about today, are basically management benchmarks. These benchmarks provide a path to help optimize your cow-calf operation. So there's some important first things. First things first. What do you want out of your efforts? What do you want out of life? Usually we don't talk about that. But that is what really needs to circumscribe what you do on the farm. Okay? So what's your vision? What resources do you have to work with? What goals are you going to set in terms of stepping stones to reach that vision? Do you have a business plan? On vision, you may have heard the old saying or scripture, where there is no vision, the people perish. And that's important to remember. You have to have a vision and be working towards that vision. What do you want? And a lot of times it's individual steps in vision making. Now I'm going to give you one that really hit me personally. One day I've been working at renovating a barn, and I was tired. I sat down on the steps, and the thought went through my mind as I looked at what I was doing, and I said to myself, this is just the way I pictured it. And that's the point. We need to sit down and envision within our minds what we want. Like that barn. I had a picture in my mind of what I was trying to do in that barn. And then we work towards that. That's where we use resources and goals to get get to that point in life where then we can sit down and rest and say, this turned out just the way I saw it in my mind back there. So that's what visioning is all about, and that's why it's important. You need to know where you're going. The other thing that we don't talk about much is business plans. I'm not going to talk about business plans today, but if you want to make a living at farming, you really should think about sitting down and doing a real business plan. To give yourself, it's really part of that visioning process. If you're borrowing money, which most of us have to borrow money, hopefully your lender might be someone that has a resource person that will help you get into doing a business plan. It's not the fun part, but it's an important part. Okay. 21st century is an information age. That's what we're going to talk about here. Information is not knowledge. You can go out to the web and get all the information you want. Information that is understood is knowledge. And then good management is the wise use of that information. Something that we want to think about is there is always the law of diminishing returns. Sometimes you're going to hear people talk about putting on an input, like nitrogen, until you maxed out. Well, you went too far, really. Because if you put on an input up in here too, if you put on an input up here, you pay dollars to buy something, and you're up in that part of the range, you just wasted your money. Because you didn't get, if you're up here on the plateau, you're not getting any return. Unless it's a long-term item like lime. Lime, that's a little bit different. Say you only need 2 tons, but you've got the money today to put on 3 tons. You're not sure you're going to have the money later on. That line will stay there. So you can, some exceptions, like Jim said earlier, it all depends. Something I try to get folks to look at is know the economics so that you can get $2 back for every dollar you invest in input items. And like if you're buying feed for weaning calves, we have good numbers that will tell us when, given the price of feed and the animal response to that feed. This year will we make $2 for every dollar we invest? And out of the 15 plus years that we've been doing this, usually we do. When we're feeding, feed the weaning calves, given our prices, so we're usually making about $2 for every dollar invested. So what are management tools? Piece of paper, calculator, and a pen. Push the pen. Smartest man I ever knew. Went to Cornell and Virginia Tech. Okay? Smartest man I ever knew was a farmer with an 8th grade education. And I appreciated working with him because what he would do, he knew how to read and write and arithmetic. If he had a question, he'd go out and get the information, fact sheets, go down to the farm equipment dealer, conservation district, whoever had the information. Then he'd come back to the office, study that information, and he had the calculator, the pad and pen, paper, and a pencil. So you only need an 8th grade education to be doing a lot of this stuff. But just use that education. I know most of you have more than an 8th grade education. My point is, he only had an 8th grade education. And having used that in today's dollars, he had a $500,000 plus worth of equipment that he purchased and used and was making a living. So that's a smart man that I knew. I appreciated working with him for a while. Today we have computers. You don't have to have a computer. They come in handy. If you like computers, have a computer. I encourage you to use it. Okay, strong believer in soil testing and forage testing. They tell us things. First of all, they tell us what we don't need to buy. Okay? They also tell us, is there a potassium mine on the farm? Is there a place that I have high potassium, I can harvest hay, and then feed that hay somewhere where I need potassium? I can relocate nutrients on the farm. You don't have to buy it all the time. Do I have a protein supplement? No. I usually use this, when we're making hay. No, separate out the hay. Know which hay field, know which hay bales came from which hay field, and have what associated hay, forage test with that hay bale. Because a lot of times I'll have hay that is the protein supplement for some poor quality hay. So that's important information. If you have calves and you're having to overwinter them like a heifer or replacement heifer, does that heifer even need any hay? And if so, how much and what type? That's what the forage test tells you. Bottom line, we're trying to substitute something that we have on the farm already, as an alternative to a cash input. If you don't have to buy it, why buy it? So soil testing. There's the tool. How many of you have a soil probe on the farm? Yay! And the rest of you are going to buy one for your next Christmas present or birthday present, I hope, right? A good soil probe is less than $100. But that's the only way you can pull a good soil test. Okay? And I know you all have whatever toy you want on the farm already. This may not be a toy, it's a tool, but you need to have one. I stole the glass from my wife, and I stole the stainless steel spoon from my wife. I redid the kitchen so she could get it. Okay. Clean plastic bucket, make sure it's good and clean. Those are the tools that you need. Soil tests, kit. What we recommend for a permanent sod, be it pasture or meadow, hay meadow, take the sample 2 inches deep. If you're in cropland, then yes, we would go 6 inches deep, or if you're no-till corn, then we recommend 2. Most of us are here in the permanent grasslands, so only take it 2 inches deep. Why 2 inches deep? Where does the rain fall? It falls on the surface of the soil. During our summers, most of our moisture, we have reserve moisture down here, but with orchard grass, fescue, clovers, by the time you get into July and August, that's where the roots are actually getting their moisture. If you've had some dry weather, they use that up. Now, if you have alfalfa, sure, they're going down here, but we don't have a lot of alfalfa in this country. Again, talking general principles. The important thing is take soil samples from different parts of the farm. That piece there ought to have a different sample than here, because I can, just looking at the management, I manage it a little bit. When I get up here on a slope, definitely that has to be a different sample than what's down here, because it's a different soil type. So break your fields, first of all, break the farm up into fields based on slope, and then also break your fields up as needed. I'm just going to give you an example. Here's a vertical picture of this one field. You don't see it, but this area here is pretty flat. Here is a mild slope over here. And then I've just divided it into an east end and a west end. So took samples from each of these 4 areas. Now if we just look at the average for the whole field, things look great. pH of over 6, almost 6.5. Phosphorus, that would, our soil test system has changed since these numbers were generated. But at the time, that was high phosphorus, and that's high potassium. Now, when I broke it out by landscape, slope, notice the difference. where it was, on the slope, it was actually higher in pH, higher in phosphorus, and, high in potassium. But down on that flat, if I were growing alfalfa, that pH is marginal. It's below what we want for alfalfa. Now for clover, it's fine. Okay, I only need a pH of 6 for clover. Phosphorus, now I'm down in the medium range. I need phosphorus on that part of the field. If I'm trying to, grow forage, and I want my forage to do its best. Potassium's still okay on the average. Now when we break that the other way into east and west, again, okay, not a lot of change in the pH, not much change there up on the slope now. Let me emphasize that. A little bit of change in the potassium, but down here on the flat, now look at the changes there. Okay, not a whole lot of change. We did drop below 6. So on that one end, since I'm below 6, I want to start thinking about line. But here on the flat, now that's where potassium came in. On the east end of the flat, I'm down well below where I want to be with potassium. So what I'm trying to show is the value of breaking in your fields into smaller management units at least once. And I say at least once because I have another field that's even bigger than this. I did the same thing and there was no difference. So what you want to find out, is there a difference or is there not? Now, here in West Virginia, you're getting your soils analyzed for free. Well, no, they're not for free. You already paid for it, which is more important. Since you've already paid for it in your tax dollars, now you want to make sure you get back out the soil analysis, right? So they're paid for, they're not for free. So, but anyway, bottom line, gives you an opportunity to fine-tune your management. Limit where you put that line, limit where you put that phosphorus versus going out there and assuming everything's hunky-dory. Okay? Fertilize based on soil test and crop removal. If it's low, you need to apply fertilizer if you want to get the maximum yield off that site. Medium, I still encourage, we want to fertilize up to the high soil test. Now when we are in the high soil test, we don't have to fertilize this year all the time. Ultimately, we do have to maintain fertility. If you're up in the very high range, this is where we don't need any fertilizer. You might even think about relocating fertility. Now, why do I want fertility in the high range? 2 reasons. I want to get maximum yield and quality off my land. But some days fertilizer markets go haywire, don't they? For you older folks, do you remember what was it, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, potassium fertilizer was over $1,000 a ton? Did that encourage you to go out and buy potassium? If you can build up your soil test, reasonably cheaply into that high range, when fertility prices go up to that level, you just step out. I don't need to buy fertilizer this year. No, I don't have to buy that $1,000 a ton fertilizer. I can wait until it's back down to $500 a ton. So that's the other reason to keep it in the high range. For phosphorus, your legumes do best if the soil test is in the high range, for phosphorus and potassium. When you start getting down into below the high range, grasses are much more competitive for potassium than are the legumes. So if you want to manage for legumes, you want to make sure that potassium is in the high range. pH, okay, just benchmarks, pH 6 for clovers or above, alfalfa 6.5 or above. Soil test P and K. H minus means I want it up to the low end of the high range. We don't have to go up, way up there. We're not trying to break the bank or anything like that. We just want to make sure everything's up there, where those grasses and clovers and forbs can do their best for us. Now, if you're removing forage, we've got to get it back there, the nutrients. Now, nitrogen. I push the legumes. If you come to my session tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about commercial nitrogen versus legumes. I'm biased. I shoot for the legume, but if you don't have any legume out there, and you know from previous management that you don't have good organic matter, that you have not fed in that part of the farm recently, then you may want to think about buying nitrogen. On the other hand, if you have fed hay there in the last year or two, you probably will not get an economic response to nitrogen. And also look at the grass. If the grass is turning yellow, and we know that the soil test is high, what are the indications that the grass is yellow? And it's not a fungus. Okay. It's probably deficient in nitrogen. That's the indicator. But also look for leaf diseases. Hopefully you don't have them. Now, hay crops remove 10 to 12 pounds of P2O5, 40 to 50 pounds of K2O. If you're not feeding your hay back out on the meadows or getting the manure back out on the meadows, and you all, well, maybe not all of us, but I used to have a field down the road that I couldn't graze. So it was, it needed fertilizer, and I rented it on a short-term lease. Now, a lot of times you say, I can't afford to fertilize that land if I only have it for 1 year. Well, you can if you have any experience on that land. Now, most of our fields, they're good for 1.5 to 2 tons of hay first cut. If you apply enough for 2 tons, okay, enough P2O5 for 2 tons of hay, enough K2O for 2 tons of hay, you make that hay, and then you bring it home and feed it somewhere on the farm, where does that fertilizer end up? It ends up at home. So you got to use it more than twice. Once on the rent land, at least once on the homeland, and if I manage the manure and hay on the homeland, I get to use it over and over and over and over again. Okay, so proper management of P2O5 and K2O, those are long-term investments. What you don't want to do is take that hay and feed it off in the woods. Because what happens to you then? You just threw it away. Okay? In West Virginia, to make a ton of hay, looking at all your real costs, it's $120 a ton if you're moving it off the field. If you're feeding it back on the field and getting that fertility back in the land, it's only costing you $60 a ton to make that. Roughly half of that cost of hay production is in the fertilizer. And it depends which year and what's the price of fertilizer. I'm not talking the $1,000 a ton potassium. I'm talking the $500 prices.
I was wondering about potassium in the soil and whether it leaches out significantly or whether it's held pretty closely in the soil.
Okay. Chris was asking, does potassium leach? On most of our soils that are moderately high in clay, potassium will not leach. We do have some sandy soils over in the Ohio River Valley and down along the Big Sandy River, southern part of the state. Those really sandy soils, you have to be careful that we don't over-fertilize potassium because it will, you'll in a sense saturate the holding capacity. And in those sandy soils, you can get leaching. But our upland soils, our hill soils, we will not get leaching. We talk about leaching with nitrogen. Our bigger issue with nitrogen is denitrification. Put out nitrogen in the spring, get a lot of rain, cold, wet rains in the spring, and the nitrogen actually is broken down into a gaseous form of nitrogen and is no longer available to the plants as nitrate. So we do have issues there. Okay, legumes versus commercial nitrogen, cost savings, forage intake, research over in Virginia, Middleburg, steers, where they had grass and legume gained 1/4 pound a day more. Our research with calf gain, weaned calves that are being preconditioned, we were getting 1/2 pound a day gain more where they had legumes. That stand right there, that's a picture of 32% legume, just to give you a feeling for it. And we flipped that area and separated it out and dried it, so my dry weight 32%. Nutrient management. Dollar value of plant nutrients passing through a 1,000-pound cow is worth between $1 and $1.50 a day. So you should be concerned where that manure and urine is going on the farm. That's why we don't want to put it over in the woods. We don't want that. If you have let me say a 1,500-pound cow, just to make life easy, we have very few 1,000-pound cows. We do have some 1,500-pound cows. Not that I'm recommending them, but that's $1.50 to over $2 a day. If you have your cows in the woods for 100 days, how many dollars is that? It's $150 to $200 that you per cow that you just lost over in the woods. It's not little dollars; it's big dollars. Just showing you in dollar values. This is P2O5K20 nutrient cycle in a this is 6 animal unit months. Animal units, 1,000-pound cow, which we don't have. This is what's removed in that steer. So it's 100. Given the prices I used for this, I don't remember which year. It's the relative difference. $130 versus $13, $39 versus $7, $102 versus $1. So you can see that the nutrient cycling within the pasture is a much bigger ticket item than what that steer takes off the field. So that gets back to water placement, size of paddock, your grazing management, things like that. Like I said, we're not going to get into all the details. Here's just an example of destroying a meadow. And I say that because when I started doing this, and I am pleased that Jim is here, Jim Garish. I always wanted to do this until and I was a little afraid to do it until I went to Jim's class. So Jim, you got me. You gave me the courage to get into doing this a number of years ago. So thank you, Jim. So,
you're welcome. I've probably changed my mind on doing it.
That's fine. I'll try to reconvince you that you were right. Anyway, got into doing this. Neighbor stopped. My wife was out there just looking things over. One day, the neighbor stopped and said, Mrs. Rayburn, your husband's destroying that meadow. She told me about it. He never told me. But that's what it looked like. I went out there and drug it. When needed, I'll put some seed out there. That's the next year. This part that you're looking at right here, where all that damage was, that's the part right here. Now, when I counted hay bales and days of grazing, the year after, not the summer after, but 12 months after, I figured I made 5 tons of forage dry matter per acre off that feed. Now, the other thing is, okay, again, this is the area where most of the quote damage was done. You see the dark part of the photo? That's all red clover in there. So I seeded red clover in there, had the most beautiful stem back for several years, no labor. Plus, I didn't lose any significant amount of fertilizer from all that hay feed. It went back on metal. Now, I will only do this once about every 6 or 8 years on a specific part of the farm. It's not every year. I move my feeding area. Now, I realize in West Virginia, not everybody is as fortunate as us folks up in Preston County. So you have to pick and choose where you can do this. You can't do this on river bottom land. You'll lose a cow. She'll go down there somewhere in the mud. So you have to pick and choose. This is the value, though, of some of what we call shallow, stony soils. Now, yeah, we can get knocked out, but it's amazing how productive some of these shallow, stony soils are, because the stones are up here and we still have a lot of soil down there too. So, nutrient management, not all soils are adapted to winter feeding. Now we have the option of roofed feeding areas, manure storage. If you do go those routes with NRCS, there's some good programs, especially for young farmers. You can get 90% cost share, or at least it's been that high. I don't know what it is this year. But if you're a young farmer and can get 90% cost share on roof feeding area and manure storage, it's foolish for me to say don't look at it. That's a good option. But you do have to have good bedding to catch the urine. Remember, potassium is in the urine. Phosphorus is in the feces. Okay? Spread the manure on the hay fields. It's not cheap. The other thing that we do is unroll hay bales on dry or frozen ground. I would not, I can't recommend unrolling hay like when it's muddy, like right now. You waste a lot. And when you have to, you buy fertilizer. But there are all these things you can do before you buy the fertilizer. Forage testing. Sample bales from each large field separately, and also have those bales separated so you can pick and choose when you want to feed them. Another thing we found out, if you get into plastic wrap balance, you want each field separated. The chances of having health issues from plastic wrap balance is very low. Okay? The reason you want to be able to identify which field was which, if you ever do have a problem with health, you may have to get rid of that hay. Okay? If you have 6 cows that die because they got fed hay that had botulism in it, you want to know which hay to get rid of and not have to condemn all of your hay. Okay? So again, doesn't happen often, only a few times a year in the whole state, but just to put it in perspective, I had a fellow who lost cows. He had 400 bales of hay that he ended up having to get rid of because he didn't know which of that hay was safe to feed and which of that hay was not safe. That's kind of the upper extreme, but it's extreme when it happens. Okay. How many of you have a good 18-volt or better electric drill? Okay, surprised not more than that. How many of you have a forage tester sampler? Good. You're on it. Now, this is a little more expensive tool. It's $125, and there are other models. It's just the one that it's a Penn State forage sampler. Okay, so it's the one I've used for years, so that's just why I stick with it. But again, if you want to take a good forage sample, you need a sampling program. And how many of you have a diesel pickup truck? If you can afford a diesel pickup truck, you can afford a forage program, okay? So anyway, go buy one. Ask your wife or your husband for a Christmas present. Okay? It's an important tool. what we found in our research, if you, take cores from individual bales within a field and fill up a 1 quart, Ziploc bag, that's a good sample. It turns out to be 10 or 12 bales per field. You'll hear people say you need more than that, but really, what we did was very simple. We would, fill up 2 quart bags, different bales, taking cores from different bales, and those 2 quart bags from that same lot of hay. So a lot of hay, that means a whole bunch of bales. It means all the bales cut on a field the same day. Okay, it was hard to tell the difference for protein and TDM in those two samples. Yes, sir.
If you're making the baleage, would it be all right to take the sample before you wrap, or is it?
Okay.
Doesn't make
The
a
question is, if I'm making baleage, do I take the sample before I wrap? No. Let the baleage ferment, and you asked the question, so I'll have to take the time. Dry hay is a lot simpler than baleage. With dry hay, we want it to go through the sweat, and hopefully it's not a bad sweat, but give it, even dry hay 30 days or more before you sample it. For baleage, you want it to go that 30 days so it goes through the fermentation process. To me, that's very important because I want to be able to see what is the pH. That will tell me, did I get good preservation in that material? Now, with baleage, not only do you take the sample, but you want to make sure you take that sample and freeze it. Get all the air out of it and freeze that sample, and then send it to the lab overnight. Because once you've taken that sample out of that wrap baleage, you've reintroduced oxygen, and it starts going through what they call secondary fermentation. By pressing the air out of it, we got rid of a lot of the oxygen, but not all of it. By freezing it, we keep the bacteria from doing that secondary fermentation. And then by overnight, express getting it to the lab, it hasn't had a chance to really have a lot of fermentation. It's going to cost you more, but if you want to get real numbers back, you need to do that. And again, we've got more information on that. Going on down the road here, animal nutrition. Manage the cow body condition score. This is the Goldilocks, I think it's Goldilocks, right? Goldilocks and the 3 bears. This cow's too thin. This cow's too fat. And this cow's about right. Now, given those 3 choices, if I'm going to make a mistake, I'd rather have that cow than that cow. Okay? A fat cow is half winter. I actually thought my cows were going to be too fat this last fall, but given the winter that we've had, I'm glad they were.